Here on a briefish history of Assassin's Creed, the host, Bane Shakes Charlie, yours truly, has a big ol' fucking mouth. Like, real big. My mouth goes just everywhere. In my defense, I have to have a big mouth to wrap around everything Assassin's Creed keeps shoving in there. It sure would be nice if, like, I had a handheld spin-off, and maybe some substantial DLC to justify a less intensive episode for once. I would absolutely wrap my mouth around both of them. This is a briefish history of Assassin's Creed. Our shrimpiest entry for Assassin's Creed 3 is the DLC, Benedict Arnold. Much like the Copernicus Conspiracy in Brotherhood, it's primarily just a mission pack that let Ubisoft slap an exclusive content on PS3 image on the cover art, although this one does at least add an extra little side area, West Point, to mess around in, and there's technically a thematic thread between the main game, this pack, and the Tyranny of King Washington DLC we're talking about later. Though it's not exactly essential, since Ubisoft wouldn't let it out to play with those heathen kids on Xbox 360. As foreshadowed in my last video, Connor's no-take-backsies on not helping George Washington is promptly ended when George Washington sends a request for some more help. Connor is pissed that Washington requested such after repeatedly attacking Connor's village. Pausing for just a second, this scene confused the shit out of me the first time I played the game, because this mission is available way too early in the campaign, long before that part of the story actually happens. It technically didn't spoil the specifics of the twist, but it did spoil the fact that something was going to happen. Good job, Ubisoft. Washington's like, real sorry, but I've heard that someone's going to overthrow West Point and probably kill Benedict Arnold IDK. That kind of betrayal would really demoralize American troops and stuff, and you're the only secret ninja guy I know. Connor very reluctantly agrees to help, but that's it. He is never, ever, ever going to cross paths with you again once this is done, George. So Connor takes out some spies he identifies with Eagle Vision and is like, "Hey, Bueno Dick Arnold, I killed these British spies for you." And Boner Duck Arnold is like, "Oh, cool, thanks. I'm definitely glad someone killed these turncoats. Hey, can you help me strengthen the fort by taking gunpowder away from the fort and arresting a loyal soldier for reasons that I promise you are totally legitimate, pretty please?" We get a random, jarring moment that looks like something out of an old gamer poop video.
"Welcome aboard, milady."
And with animations like that, Connor is very suspicious of Bandersnatch Arnold. It's a good thing too, because he eavesdrops some suspicious dialogue between Eggdish Arnold and the worst fucking spy I've ever seen. Like, this dude changes into his red coat uniform long before leaving Patriot territory, and is caught almost immediately without Connor having to do anything. Connor confronts Benedict Arnold with a signed letter that practically says, "I'm going to betray America for £20,000, but is interrupted by a British attack on the fort, and Boinkadick Arnold is able to flee due to the power of historical accuracy. Washing George is like, "Well damn, no one can catch up to him now." And Connor's like, "Yeah, sure does suck being betrayed and having your people get attacked and murdered by the person who betrayed you and won't face consequences for his betrayal. Huh?" Connor makes it clear this time that, for real, there's no way he's interacting with Washington again. Definitely, absolutely not. Never, not even for a serious episodic DLC pack. Nuh-uh. The end. Spoiler alert, slavery is bad. Anyone who disagrees is allowed to go out back and Old Yeller themselves behind the shed. Of course, the problem of slavery in the free world was touched on already in Assassin's Creed 3, so this is not new to my video series of genitalia jokes. Now it is simply coming right to the forefront. Assassin's Creed 3, Liberation, or Assassin's Creed Liberation HD if you played the PS3 remaster or the PS4 remaster of the PS3 remaster, which is the version I'll be mostly using for easy recording and also for pretty, is a handheld game designed to supplement the main title, putting it alongside Altair's Chronicles, Bloodlines, and 2 Discovery. Unlike those, it was released on the PlayStation Vita, which can actually process a decent-sized city and more than 4 characters at a time. It is also the most accurate depiction of the Assassin's Creed experience on a handheld device, but considering that it's going up against Altair's Chronicles, that would be like me bragging about beating Stephen Hawking in a foot race. Of course I would! He is dead. Assassin's Creed Lib is less tied to the main game than previous handheld spin-offs, so instead of playing as Connor, barring a single bonus memory, we play as New Orleans-based assassin Aveline de Grand Prix. Aveline is daughter to a wealthy white father and his placée, which was the closest to being his wife as French colonies would allow a black woman to be. Aveline's mother vanished at a young age, but Aveline does have a stepmother, and not like the kind of stepmother you open an incognito tab for. Side note, why is stepfamily the big porn trend right now? Pseudo-incest is still weird. What if someone is just there because they want to see some hot people fuck? Being from 2 worlds, if you will, gives Aveline some unique options too. Aveline can put on a handful of different personas that change how you interact with missions and the city. First is the assassin persona, and if you really need me to explain what types of things this persona gets into, maybe you should start with my first video and catch yourself up. I went over the series fundamentals very lovingly there. The assassin has all the normal weapons and abilities, but is the most suspicious of the bunch. There's also the lady persona, who can't free run due to the dress, and has very limited weapons due to fewer places to hide them, but can seduce men and also commit umbrella gun murder. Rounding out the bunch is the slave persona, who can blend in with slaves out working and has a few more weapons than the lady, which are justified as working tools. While the persona mechanics are certainly novel, I don't think they're quite as fleshed out as they could be. Most likely, you will just play as the assassin unless a mission specifically calls for one of the other 2. Otherwise though, gameplay is what you'd expect from the series. The updated free running and combat from 3 are here, but other new systems like naval combat are gone. Hunting isn't a thing, since raccoons are apparently civilians now, but you can still get attacked by predators out on the bayou, mostly alligators which don't want their eggs to become part of your collectible hunt. Sorry, gators, should have thought of that before you existed in a Ubisoft game. Several tools and weapons are represented here from the main title, although with some variety to keep it fresh. Aveline is great at blowing. Poison darts, specifically, one of which just kills people, like poison in the last 3 games, and one which makes enemies aggro each other until they die. I mean, she could also be decent at fellatio, but I doubt she could beat series throat goat Altair. Instead of rope darts, she uses a whip for the same general functions, except now bodies awkwardly flop back to the ground immediately instead of hanging there. Between the cool hat, the whip, and the series' typical ancient artifact hunt that goes on mid-game, this is honestly one of the best Indiana Jones games in the last decade. Before I bitch about anything, I do really want to take a moment to express some respect for Aveline herself. Even when the story itself is content just being a sufficient, occasionally paint-by-the-numbers spin-off, Aveline is always handled well as a character. She is a fun character to explore. Not like that, you horny fools! Aveline's signature weapon is a machete. It says something about her personality. She's killing slavers with their own tools of oppression. More people would understand irony correctly if that irony threatened their lives. Aveline's situation is well fleshed out. Her drive to free slaves makes perfect sense. That's not hard to understand, but the game goes so much further than just that. There are many small moments that emphasize this woman's life is torn between one of luxury and one of prejudice. One mission at a party, you can hear other wealthy attendees hushedly discussing her complexion.
And her complexion? Of course she's a different of the family, but her mother? It is shocking.
Aveline's role as an assassin is far more like a superhero's secret identity than we see in the other protags. She's really the only field-operating local assassin in New Orleans. She's far more involved in defending the powerless, what with the slavery problem, and her dual identities are emphasized since she keeps her nocturnal proclivities secret from her family by pretending to be a pampered rich kid, sort of like a Bruce Wayne, who fills out a dress. Even using a cool hat instead of a hood by default is an intentional stylistic choice the developers went with to differentiate Aveline's mentality on assassinating. I mean, I always just buy the optional hood instead, because I am the guilty party who pretends Assassin's Creed has no fatigue. Shut your goddamn mouth. Aveline praise aside, I really must bitch about something crucial here. This game stands tall and proud above the handheld games, but it doesn't compete nearly as well against the console games. It is more limited by both budget and its original tech specs, and doesn't really do anything exceptional that you haven't already seen in the main series entries. By these factors, the best reason to play it is as a portable game, except the Vita version is undoubtedly the worst way to play it. It does the obnoxious thing where it's using touchscreen, gyroscopic, or camera features for gameplay just because the Vita has them available. It's awkward stroking the back screen to try and pick pockets, and having to hold your device up to a light source to read letters is not only stupid, but doesn't even work if you only follow the in-game directions. You also have to hold the Vita sideways for reasons unexplained. I had no idea this was necessary the first time I played the handheld version, and since this was en route up to Canada, I had no cell signal to look up a solution and was too stuck to progress. Further, there were some tweaks and additions made to the remaster, and some further tweaks and improvements made to the remaster of the remaster, so the Vita is literally just the worst version of the same experience. So, don't play the best handheld-ass Creed on handheld. If you have the choice, play it on console, where I can't recommend it over any mainline Assassin's Creed. It's not a bad experience either way, but it's like choosing between a good lover who occasionally pisses in the fridge versus a lover who can only give you 7/10 of an orgasm. Storytime. We start off playing as God's most feared creation, a gamer. See, that wacky pharmaceutical company Abstergo has created an entertainment division and released some sort of gaming technology that, shocker shocker, lets you play through someone else's ancestral memories. For nefarious purposes, obviously, but we'll pick up that thread shortly. The memories boot up and we're playing as little child Aveline at age 9, who comes across as younger than Connor at age 4 because children confuse Assassin's Creed. She is out with her real mommy when Aveline gets distracted and chases after a chicken. Pretty relatable. She ends up seeing a slave auction for the first time, and the horror and confusion visibly hit her in sharp contrast to her privileged upbringing. She tries to run back to her mother, but she's gone missing, and Aveline accidentally bothers a white woman in a similar dress instead. The local authorities knock her out for being black. Cut to adult Aveline fighting a bunch of slavers, but oh my god, one of them is deep-throating a snake! Oh, it's just a nightmare. Her stepmother, Madeline, is in her bedchambers, not for that reason. We've been over that, goddammit. She's just concerned for her stepdaughter's well-being. The intro dips us into Aveline's typical life. In addition to stepmommy, we meet her daddy, and you can tell he's rich because he's wearing a top hat 28 years before top hats are officially recognized as being invented. We also meet, Gerald LeBlanc, who is such a boring character, I literally couldn't remember his name while writing this sentence while playing through the story to record. I had to write name in parentheses in my rough draft to finish the sentence before I could double check his name. This is the third time I have played through this game. He is that boring. Gerald also has this obnoxious verbal tick where he, says, in between every few words. Look, I get it. Sometimes I write, into my script to give it more natural sounding dialogue. But this is too much. He's awkward because he is horny for Aveline, but he actually knows about and helps with the assassin stuff she does, so she tolerates it. I'll spare the finer details, since it's really just the typical Assassin's Creed structure, so here's a quick rundown on the important stuff. 1. Slaves are going missing. 2. Aveline saves some slaves, set to vanish, and by pretending to be the well-mannered but oblivious rich kid, she's able to convince her stepmommy to smuggle them to freedom. 3, there's a Spanish Templar schemer named Rafael Joaquin de Ferrer. And 4, there's an even higher-ranking Templar known only as the Company Man, who seems to be behind it all. After killing a governor, she heads to the bayou to meet with her assassin mentor Agate, who sets her on the path of tracking someone impersonating his mentor, Macandal. She teams up with local smugglers who go from disliking her.
Did you bring a canoe? Or do you expect your gentle breeding to keep you from the alligators?
Hey, I brought my own goddamn canoe, you asshole. It's right there. To loving her in like one mission. She goes after not Macandal, who is impersonating the real Macandal so hard he lost an arm for the role, performing some undisclosed ceremony. There's some on-screen visual glitches, she fights and kills him, and discovers this guy broke up with Agate and the assassins because a woman came in between them. Aveline's real mother. We, as the unspeakable monstrosity, known as the gamer playing this, are also interrupted when hacker group Erudito is like, bro, Abstergo's lying, and hacks an NPC to be Citizen E, which you kill to show what was cut out during those visual glitches. In the full version of the scene, we find out not Macandal was going to poison New Orleans nobles. Abstergo is omitting details to spin the narrative. Skipping ahead a couple of years, New Orleans is now under Spanish control instead of the French, and the Spanish are being dicks to everyone. Now, there are slaves and poor people going missing too. During investigation, Gerald tries to be not boring for a single mission, and then retires from being not boring following the mission, cause it was scary. Agate has Aveline kill the new Spanish governor, but he immediately caves and gives her everything she needs, so she spares him. Agate does not like this. Turns out all the missing people are being shipped out to Chichen Itza in Mexico. Chichen Itza is a clever Templar ploy. This new life supposedly gives them so much more freedom than slavery, but it's clear there are several mildly subtler ways of keeping the workers basically still enslaved. And another Citizen E hack shows just how cruel the Templars are willing to be to keep their control. Aveline couldn't smuggle in her own equipment, so she MacGyvers some hidden blades out of belts, knives, and a plank of wood. She enters a first Civ temple and finds half an Isu doohickey inside a maze puzzle. I know the Isu don't think humans were all that smart, but that's just patronizing. Aveline murks de Ferrer, and holy shit, it's her real mother. Mommy Jean is like, Mon Dieu, the blades of the enemy! And leaves, refusing to elaborate. Aveline heads back to New Orleans, where literally nothing important happens until she goes back to Chichen Itza again. This time, her mommy's like, Sorry, I freaked out. You're obviously not an assassin.
You are no assassin. You are my daughter.
She asks Aveline to find the other half of the Isu disc thing, which is behind a sliding block puzzle this time.
This will not be the last you see of me.
This game will never take us back to her mommy again. On re-arrival in New Orleans, Aveline's daddy is sickly on his deathbed, reminding me that, oh yeah, he's in this game. Stepmommy Madeline is like, Psst, Aveline, can you help me smuggle an escaped slave away? He'll be important to the plot later. Aveline gets him to a patriot who can take him up north. She then goes to a big party where she thinks the company man is, but the Templar she kills is like, You fool, the company man is a she, and dies. Despite the fact that they've kind of, sort of given away their twist, Aveline has no clue who it is, and finds out from Madeline that her daddy has passed away. She ends up following some off-screen leads up to New York, where she has a crossover mission with Connor, hunting down an individual who can give her the company man's real identity. It's the slave Madeline had her help, except he's fighting for the British now. I killed him, but somehow that wasn't good enough, so Aveline has to kill him in a cutscene. He's like, bruh, everyone knows who the company man is at this point. Just get on with it. She confronts Madeline, the company man, who turns into a cartoon villain for 15 seconds before calming down and explaining she knows Aveline is an assassin, but Madeline loves her as a real daughter since she can't have her own children. Aveline confronts Agate about the whole mess, but he's sort of gone off the deep end and poisons her with a brief hallucinogen that makes her see the people she's killed before he's like, "I should have knocked up your mother and been your real daddy!" and jumps to his death out of the treehouse. This whole game is honestly just the weirdest custody battle in history. Aveline goes back to Madeline and is like, "Well, that was weird. I'm joining you now!" And some Abstergo credits roll. Pause for a second. Abstergo's entire evil plan here is to release this as a game, but remove the context that makes the Templars look bad, and also remove mention of the word Templar since they're a secret society. They want to release a game to make themselves look good to a public that doesn't know they exist, except since this is advertised as a game from real genetic memories, they risk blowing their own cover when people try to figure out the details of these historical events about some mysterious group that Aveline joined. This is a dumb plan, even censoring the nasty details that hackers can just put right back in. Erudito hacks the game again, and really Abstergo just ended the final scene a little prematurely. Madeline puts the disc together, but it's missing a piece. Aveline is like, "I figured out that you poisoned my daddy and banished my mommy, time to die." She then puts the necklace from her mommy in the disc, and it shows ancient humans joining Eve's rebellion against the Isu, since Eve is, like, the first person to liberate people from slavery in Ascreed canon. It's like a parallel to Aveline, you see. Do you see it? Do you see how clever our parallel is? Do you? The end. Quick side stop before we move away from Liberation. On Vita, and only on Vita, Liberation also has a multiplayer mode. Games like Killzone Mercenary make it very clear the Vita can handle smaller versions of online multiplayer, but Liberation sadly does not give us the good multiplayer like I harped on about for an entire episode. Instead of fun cat and mouse gameplay, you tap a city. Then you keep doing that. That's it. The goal is to get more points than the other team in a weekly session. It doesn't really explain the deeper mechanics, which it technically has. It's more about who touched the cities more often in a week. It's not fun. It's the kind of garbage you might expect on a Facebook browser game, and it's not even balanced. Each season, you pick between fighting for the Assassins or the Templars, and most everyone, naturally, picks the Assassins. So, it's a game where you hit meaningless buttons repeatedly, and you already know where everyone will stand when it's over. So it's basically working in capitalist America. The end. This multiplayer mode would later mysteriously go missing from the remasters. So far, Ascreed DLC has really been two things, pretty straightforward, and more of the same stuff we saw in the main game. Ascreed 3 is the first time Ubisoft was like, let's make it big, and meaty, and weird, and we have the Tyranny of King Washington, or Taco for short. It's substantial, since each of the 3 episodes dropped for $10 a piece, which doesn't sound like much now, but felt like a lot back in the day and age of 2013. And it's intentionally doing some out there things to stand out. Let me tell you, Bizarre is right up my alley. Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol is my favorite comic of all time. I made the baby from Eraserhead on the Wii so it could show up while I play baseball. Hell, you don't even need proof. You've already seen the jokes I make for this series. Bane Shakes Charlie is the perfect person to judge if the weirdness of King Washington works for Ascreed 3. I'm not even going to break things down ahead of the plot like I usually do. Let's just watch things roll out naturally. If you've been paying attention to the lore, George Washington first appeared in a Subject 16 puzzle back in Ascreed 2, in contact with an Apple of Eden. If you really look hard, You might notice that this did not happen anywhere in the main story. We start off Taco with a quote about absolute power corrupting, and there are brief flashes of Connor and Georgie in some woods with an apple, and it blacks out. Connor is awoken in unfamiliar attire by his mother. Zio is like, "Wake up, slacker, we gotta save some people from the Bluecoats." But he's puzzled because all his memories are from the base game. As they stop an American attack, she keeps talking about King Washington and stuff like that, and he's like, "No way." But yes way, King Washington's troops are attacking Concord. In a scene evoking The Patriot, the movie, Bluecoats have trapped civilians in a church with the intent of burning it down. Unlike The Patriot, though, this game is willing to admit that it is an unrealistic work of fiction. Mel Gibson can go fuck his own face. Connor and Zio save the civvies, except the Bluecoats fucking spawn kill them. In come King Washington and his top cronies, Israel Putnam and Benedict Arnold. Washington is dramatically out of character, being outright vile and explicitly racist, and he's also waving around an apple of Eden on a stick, which he uses to laser Zio to death. Connor tries to fight back, but gets curb stomped, and George shoots him again, stabs him with a bayonet, and then shoots him with the musket the bayonet is attached to, just to make sure he dies. This may seem like overkill, but all it does is put Connor in a 5-month coma, so it actually wasn't overkill enough. Connor awakens with his surviving tribe members, and the clan elder tells him the only way to stand a chance is to go drink tea made from a magic spirity tree, so he sets off into the bleak winter frontier. It's not quite the frontier we are used to. Death and despair are everywhere, frozen corpses littered across the winter views, and the Bluecoats are out in much larger numbers than even England ever dispatched. Connor makes the magic tree tea and finds himself in a weird space that appears to be inside the memory corridors, where he's communing with wolves. He awakens and now has the ability to turn invisible at the cost of his health points. Considering he heals faster than your dad nuts, he is okay with this trade-off. He also gets the ability to summon hologrammy wolves too, with literally no drawbacks. He's like, "Sweet," and starts using the powers to fight back, but this draws attention to them, and his remaining tribe members are slaughtered. With her dying breath, the clan elder is like, having powers seems to lead down undesirable roads. I feel like this would be a good theme for something, but oh no, I'm dead. Connor goes to take down Benedict Asshole, but with his last breaths, he's like, "Thank God, you freed me from mind control. Also, I don't remember your timeline, and also go free Benjamin Franklin, he can help you." And with that, Benedict Arnold dies. Putnam gets the drop on Connor and carts him off to Boston to give as a present to Washington. Washington is like, "Damn, he lived? Cut his head off this time." Connor uses invisibility to break out before scheduled decapitation and discovers his pal, Conan Tokon, is alive and locked up with him. Conan Tokon starts to drink the tea, but Connor's like, "Nah man, power corrupts. Give me the tea and I'll deal with the burden of more cool powers." This time, he communes with an eagle, killing lynxes left and right, before getting sort of flight, which actually just functions sort of like the grapple gun in Arkham Asylum. Ben Franklin shows up with some guards, and when Connor tries to assassinate him, George Washington intercepts him in the memory corridor and they fight. Connor and Conan Tokon join up with Samuel Adams' rebellion. Connor starts scoping out Franklin's whereabouts, eventually freeing him from mind control through the medicinal power of archery, and while Connor and Benny Franks start to worry on getting special metal for a special key to open Washington's base, Conan Tokon and Adams go to meet up with a captain sympathetic to their rebellion. This is a mistake. Connor finds out from a soldier he's coerced into playing checkers with that it was all a trap.
Putnam started a rumor that the captain of the guard was friendly to the rebels. Hilarious.
It's quite a dramatic scene, but it also contains what is definitely my favorite prompt in the series yet. Press square to rage quit.
That's it.
Adams and Conan Tokon were thoroughly defeated, and Putnam violently beat Adams to death. Alone, Franklin and Connor arrange plans to sneak away aboard the Aquila, but Putnam shows up with Conan Tokon hostage, forgetting that Connor has magic eagle powers now. As they arrive in New York, we see the iconic New York City skyline is ever so slightly different with a giant flat-topped pyramid, King Washington's palace. They fight off his navy as best as possible, but the Aquila's weapons are eventually disabled. Connor has his allies abandon ship, and Holdo maneuvers an opposing man of war. Franklin gets to shore first, where he is ambushed by King Washington. Conan Tokon comes to his rescue, but is killed. Connor, without hesitation, drinks more tea. He finds himself communing with a massive bear. I'm talking a huge ol' honkin' bear. I'm gonna call it the Mega Bear. He climbs aboard the Mega Bear, pulling massive spears from the beast's body. The big, strong bear enters Connor and makes him explode. As he awakens, his eyes are a very creepy, unnatural blue. He and Franklin help Thomas Jefferson do more rebellion stuff around New York, as you'd reasonably expect, but something is a little different in Connor. He's acting a bit off, even pondering aloud what central, powerful figure should lead the people when Washington is removed. Could these absolute powers be corrupting him? Absolutely. Washington gives a speech about how America is the freest nation ever, so free with so much freedom they're going to go attack England and enslave all the English people. Connor knocks a fucking tower over and they storm the pyramid. He retraces his mother's steps from the time she almost succeeded at stealing the apple on a stick, eventually using Franklin's key to open a big sci-fi chamber in the center, and faces Washington. He accuses George of being under control of the apple, but it's ambiguous whether that's actually the case. George accuses Connor of coming to steal the apple for even more power, but it's ambiguous whether that's actually the case. They begin to fight, but it's ambiguous whether that's actually— oh wait, no, that one's not ambiguous. They actually do duke it out. Turns out standing on a stained glass surface and using explodey bear powers is not the best combination, unless you really like gravity, and they crash back down into the throne chamber. Washington slumps into his throne and dies, and as an injured Connor sees his mother and Conan Tokon begging him not to take the apple, he sees himself demanding that he take it. As he touches it, Washington and Connor awaken back in the woods in their correct timeline. George had taken the apple from an English officer during the final battle of the Revolutionary War, and because it had been plaguing him with nightmares, he brought it to the only secret ninja guy he knew out of desperation, where both were dragged into the visions. Both are humbled, and we see they've learned all about power and it corrupting and that shit. Washington is visited by an unknown man appearing in his office, recommending he should crown himself king to strengthen America. Is this guy a Templar? A vision from the apple? A hallucination from experiencing the alternate timeline so long? The ghost of Christmas yet to come? It's ambiguous, yada yada. And it doesn't really matter, because Washington tells him to go fuck a duck. He's already learned this lesson. America will never have kings, baby! The man vanishes when he isn't looking, proving him to be Batman. Connor, meanwhile, has taken the apple out to sea to cast it into the water, where no one can find it. He doesn't take it all that far from land, though. Maybe next time drop the highly dangerous device further away from civilization. Just spitballing here. Anyway, the point is, he didn't claim the power for himself. The end. Except I'm going to analyze some stuff here. I haven't talked for an hour this time. Since I didn't bitch earlier, if I have one complaint, it's that this DLC could have gotten even weirder without breaking the lore. My favorite bits were absolutely whenever it did something out there, like Washington just psychically interrupting the memory corridor. More of that would be great. Also, back when it came out, the episodic nature did not do this any favors. As a whole package, it's a good amount of content, and it really should have just released as one whole. Instead, each one was released a month apart. It's not really an issue now, since most people who want to play it can get the whole thing as part of the remaster on modern hardware, but it definitely gave early adopters the worst way to experience it. And since we're talking the remaster, there are a few pre-rendered cutscenes in the DLC that didn't get the remaster upgrade and appear in the previous generation visuals. I don't know if they couldn't remaster them due to being pre-rendered, or if DLC cutscenes just didn't merit any extra time and resources considering the remaster included the entirety of 3 and Liberation as well, but it's worth mentioning. But Charlie, why does any of this matter if Tyranny of King Washington is just a dream? Thanks for asking, Strawman. It's true that explaining crazy canon-breaking events away with dreams or visions is an absolutely lazy way to do a twist. The thing is, though, Taco doesn't treat it as a twist. This series established technology that can make you see things back in game numero uno, so that should be the default assumption the moment anything is awry. The episodes are even trying to get you to assume that. Besides just showing a glimpse of exactly that right at the start, each pack has 3 locations where Connor has lucid memories from the real timeline seep in. Finding those gives more context to George and Connor in the woods. These also imply why we're seeing the things we are seeing. Alternate timeline stories are usually based around the concept for want of a nail, where one detail changes and everything else becomes crazy different. Like how in It's a Wonderful Life, if George had never been born, the whole town is run by the evil capitalist and his wife is a mega virgin. Taco is not one of these. Several deliberate differences have to be in place. Connor's mother never died in the fire. Connor never joined the assassins. The Kanienke Haka tribe is also guarding a tree imbued with Isu technology. Put a pin in that, we're coming right back to it. But why, Bane shakes Charlie? Why this timeline? I'll tell you. Remember how the Isu were using their calculations to figure out which future events would give Desmond the best chance of success to stop Sunpocalypse 2012? One of the lucid memories that slips into episode 3 is actually not Connor's. It's a vision of Desmond dying. When the Isu were plunging into the future, the Taco timeline was one of their calculations, and it obviously was not ideal. If anything, the Apple was programmed to show this reality to Washington and Connor to enforce the ideal timeline. The Templars probably would have gotten control of America much, much sooner if it were a monarchy, and it would have been that much harder for Desmond. But Charlie, Connor is doing magical things. That can't be plausibly canon, even in a different calculation, can it? It sure can, you imbecile! God, I love winning arguments I wrote for myself. I don't know if this is a tree that is like accidentally sucking up some sort of Isu nanotech or power out of a device, or if it's just Isu tech designed to look like a tree. But either way, its powers look and act like any other Isu tech. The Skyworld is clearly the same psychic projection most assassins with Eagle Vision experience when they murk an MFer. The wolves are hardly different from Altair's hologram assassins. Powers drain life just like Ezio's apple in Brotherhood as they're being used, and if we skip ahead to look back in time at Cassandra using the Spear of Leonidas, another piece of Isu tech, we can see some decently similar abilities in this very timeline too. This ain't just a dream. This is there to elaborate on the lore without telling you it's doing that. The end. And that's going to do it for this video. Next time, it's just Black Flag. Just one single, cohesive entry. Since our piratey prequel is a permanently popular part of these games, I'm aiming to make it a good jumping on point for new viewers. If you enjoy these videos, I'd greatly appreciate it if you shared them around as thoroughly as your uncle shares his genetic blueprints with women who aren't naturally blonde. Feel free to leave a comment denying that your uncle is a manslut. though we all know the truth. Subscribe to see more, and drop a like so my brain can be fooled into some self-esteem. I'll see you next time with a whole bunch of salty semen ready for ya.